Langley, Virginia, February 1962. 2 in the morning. James Angleton is alone. His secretary stopped logging his late nights 2 years ago. The evenings he leaves before midnight are the exception now, not the rule. His wife has stopped calling after 10. His children know him primarily as the sound of a car in the driveway at an hour when they are already asleep. He has, without quite deciding to, traded his personal life for this room, this desk, this particular darkness. The office is cold. He keeps it that way, cold enough that visitors wrap their arms across themselves and lose the ability to stay long. The desk is buried in files, index cards, cross-references connected by threads of logic that only he can follow. On the wall behind him, a single framed photograph. A chalk stream in England where he goes fly fishing. The one place he has told people where his mind goes quiet. Tonight his mind is not quiet. On the desk a cable from Helsinki. He has read it so many times the paper has softened at the folds. A Soviet intelligence officer wants to defect. The debriefs have been running since December. The product has reached Angleton. He lights a cigarette. He reads it again. The Soviet officer is claiming that the KGB has not simply recruited agents inside Western intelligence. It has placed moles, deep cover, long-term, strategically embedded, inside MI6, inside the State Department, inside the CIA. Angleton sets the cable down. He already believes it. He has believed something like it for 11 years, since the morning he learned that Kim Philby, the British officer he had trusted with everything, the man he had shared operational secrets with and eaten dinner with and drunk whiskey with until the small hours, had been a Soviet agent the entire time. Not recently turned, recruited in 1934, working for Moscow for 17 years, while Angleton called him his closest friend in intelligence. This cable has just given that 11-year wound a name, a structure, and a face. Angleton picks up the phone. He authorizes the transfer. He does not know, sitting in the cold, in the dark, the cigarette burning down, that the thing which will destroy the CIA's most important work for the next 12 years is not the man on the plane from Helsinki. It is the certainty already sitting in his own chest. The wound that never closed. James Jesus Angleton was born in 1917 in Boise, Idaho. His father was an American businessman. His mother was Mexican. He was educated in England, Malvern College, then Yale, then Harvard Law, interrupted by the war. By 26 he was running counterintelligence operations in Rome for the OSS, displaying a talent for the work that his superiors described in terms reserved for men twice his age. In Rome, he met Kim Philby, Harold Adrian Russell Philby, senior British intelligence officer, charming, effortlessly brilliant, capable of drinking most men under the table and emerging with his thinking sharpened. He became Angleton's closest professional relationship, closer in some ways than any personal friendship. They ate together, they drank together heavily, both of them. They shared assessments, analysis, sources, the kind of operational thinking that intelligence officers share only with people they trust completely. Angleton trusted him completely. In 1944, Philby was appointed head of MI6's anti-Soviet section, the British counterintelligence operation specifically targeting Soviet intelligence. He used the position to warn Moscow which Western agents were about to be blown. He used it to protect Soviet sources inside Western governments. He used it in the specific case of Operation Valuable, a joint British-American effort to infiltrate anti-communist agents into Albania, to give the Soviets enough advance warning that every single agent who landed was captured. They were tortured, then executed. Philby attended the planning meetings. He shook hands with the men before they went in. He knew what was waiting for them on the other side. In 1951, 2 other members of what would become known as the Cambridge Five, Guy Burgess and Donald MacLean, defected to Moscow. The net began closing on Philby. He was recalled to London, interrogated, placed under a cloud he spent years publicly denying. Angleton defended him. To colleagues who raised doubts privately, he said Philby was clean. He could not be a Soviet agent. Angleton had known him for years. He would have seen it. In January 1963, Philby defected to Moscow. A colleague found Angleton that afternoon alone in his office. There was a glass of whiskey on the desk, untouched. The colleague later said that Angleton's face did not show anger. It showed something quieter and more permanent, the expression of a man who has just discovered that his own judgment, the thing he trusted most in the world, had been wrong for 17 years. He never spoke about that afternoon, not in any interview, not in any document that has entered the public record. But everything he did for the next 20 years flowed from it. The man who stole his own memory. Anatoli Golitsyn was 35 years old when he walked into the Helsinki embassy. Small, precise, with the permanently assessing look of a man who has spent 15 years inside an organization where everyone is watching everyone else, where trust is a vulnerability, and the question you never stop asking is, what does this person actually want from me? He had wanted to defect since 1959, not from a single dramatic moment. No crisis of conscience, no specific order that crossed a line he could not cross. It had come from something slower, the accumulated weight of understanding over years, exactly how the organization he served operated, what it asked of the people inside it, what it did to them over time. He had watched colleagues destroyed for reasons that had nothing to do with competence or loyalty, officers whose careers ended not because they had failed, but because someone above them needed a failure to deflect from their own. He had understood by the late 1950s that there was no version of his future inside the KGB that did not end badly. The only question was what he could take with him when he left. He could not take documents. Missing files would trigger an investigation before he reached any border. What he took instead was harder to detect and harder to confiscate. He took memory. 2 years of organized, structured, deliberately prepared memory. He walked into the American embassy in Helsinki in December 1961 and began to talk. The early product was real. He identified John Vassall, a British Admiralty clerk blackmailed into passing naval secrets to the Soviets for 8 years. Arrested. He helped expose George Blake's betrayal of the Berlin Tunnel, covered in a future episode. Confirmed. Documented. That credibility was the foundation, and once it was laid, Golitsyn offered the theory. He told Angleton the Soviets had developed a grand strategic deception operation, Politburo-sanctioned, decade-long, designed to make the West believe the Soviet bloc was weaker and more fractured than it was. That the Sino-Soviet split was theater, coordinated, performed for Western consumption. And then at the end, the move that made everything else irreversible. He said, "Any defector who comes after me and contradicts what I am telling you, treat them as a KGB plant sent to protect the moles I am exposing." Read that sentence again. He had made himself unfalsifiable. Any evidence against his theory was by definition part of the conspiracy he was describing. Any defector who said otherwise was a plant. Any CIA officer who argued the hunt had gone too far was either naive or compromised. There was no piece of evidence, no argument, no contradictory voice that the framework was required to take seriously. That is not intelligence. That is a closed room with no windows and a light that never goes off. Angleton looked at this man, this small, precise, permanently calculating man who had just described the world exactly as Angleton had feared it to be since the afternoon with the untouched whiskey glass, and felt, for the first time in 11 years, the specific relief of a wound that has finally been given a name. He believed every word. The first meeting. There is no official transcript of the first substantive conversation between James Angleton and Anatoli Golitsyn. What the record allows us to reconstruct is the shape of it. What developed between the two men was not a normal handler-asset relationship. It was a collaboration. Golitsyn would offer a piece of his theory. Angleton would test it against files he had spent 20 years accumulating. The files would appear to confirm it. Golitsyn would refine it. Angleton would find more confirmation. Each of them in the other found the audience they had always needed. Golitsyn had carried his theory alone for years, through 2 years of preparation, through the defection itself, waiting for someone who understood its architecture. Angleton had built an entire counterintelligence machine on the premise that the enemy was already inside, and spent years being told he had gone too far. Then Golitsyn arrived with confirmed intelligence, Vassal Blake, proving the maximum suspicion was not paranoia. It was accuracy. 2 men, one believed the conspiracy because he had lived inside it. The other believed it because it explained the worst day of his life. Together they were about to become the most destructive force the CIA had ever turned on itself. The machine turns inward. His name was David Murphy. He ran the CIA's Soviet division. What follows is representative of the documented pattern of the period. In 1962, Murphy had a Soviet source, a mid-level GRU officer making careful, cautious contact with CIA officers in Europe, signaling his willingness to provide intelligence in exchange for resettlement in the West. The kind of operation that, if it worked, could give the United States a window inside Soviet military intelligence for years. The operation was reviewed by Angleton's counterintelligence staff. The verdict: possible provocation. The approach pattern was too careful, consistent with a KGB-trained officer running a false flag operation. "Do not proceed," Murphy pushed back. The approach was careful because the man was frightened, taking the same precautions any rational person would take when approaching a foreign intelligence service from inside a country that executed people for exactly that. The review stood. The operation died. Murphy never learned what happened to that officer. Whether he tried another service, whether he gave up, whether the KGB found out he had been trying. This is what the mole hunt looked like from inside the Soviet division. Not dramatic confrontations, quiet operational death, sources not recruited, contacts not pursued, operations not run, because pursuing them invited a review that could end your career, and not pursuing them ended nothing except the operation itself. The careers ended quietly. No arrests, no charges. Men were moved away from sensitive postings into administrative roles with titles and no real function. The intelligence equivalent of a box handed to you without explanation. Peter Carlo. 20 years in the CIA, forced out in 1963. He spent the next 2 decades carrying an accusation never formally made and never formally answered. In 1987, 12 years after Angleton was gone, the CIA reviewed his case. Innocent, formal government apology, back pay. As if 2 decades could be returned in paperwork. Paul Gabler. The CIA's first station chief in Moscow, removed, sidelined. Igor Orlov, a Soviet emigre who had served American intelligence since the war. Investigated so repeatedly that his marriage broke apart, his business collapsed, his community turned away. Never charged, never cleared. He died under the shadow. The Soviet division, the most important operational unit the CIA possessed for understanding its primary adversary, was effectively paralyzed for the better part of a decade. No KGB operation achieved that. No mole, had one existed exactly as Golitsyn described, could have produced it. Angleton did it himself. The man in the cell. January 1964. 6 weeks after Dallas. John Kennedy had been assassinated 6 weeks earlier. The Warren Commission had just been formed. And the question at the absolute center of everything: did the Soviets do it? Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union in 1959, lived there for nearly 3 years, married a Soviet woman, and returned to the United States in 1962. 14 months later, he was in a 6th-floor window in Dallas with a rifle. Now, 6 weeks after the assassination, a KGB officer named Yuri Nosenko contacted the CIA in Geneva and said he wanted to defect. What he was offering, among other things, was the KGB's complete file on Lee Harvey Oswald. Nosenko said the KGB had had nothing to do with the assassination. During Oswald's time in the Soviet Union, they had found him unstable and operationally useless. His file contained no intelligence value and no operational connection to anything that happened in Dallas. The Warren Commission was waiting. The country was waiting. James Angleton looked at Yuri Nosenko and saw a plant. Golitsyn had said it explicitly. The Soviets will send someone after me to discredit my account and protect their operations. And here was Nosenko, arriving at the perfect moment, with the perfect answer. Too perfect. Angleton's staff found inconsistencies, dates that didn't align, claims about rank that seemed inflated. Some were real discrepancies. Some may have been a frightened man misremembering under interrogation. None of it mattered. The framework had already decided. The CIA built a cell, a specially constructed isolation room at a facility in the Virginia countryside. Small, painted gray, no windows, a cot, a toilet, a single overhead light that was never turned off. Nosenko was placed inside it. Total isolation, no books, no radio, no newspapers, no human contact except the interrogators who came to break him. The temperature kept deliberately uncomfortable, the light manipulated to disrupt sleep, every variable of his existence controlled by people whose job was to find the crack in his story. On the worst nights, and there were many, Nosenko would press his back against the gray wall and look at the light that never went off and understand with the particular clarity that comes from having nothing else to think about for months at a time that no one was coming, that the people holding him had decided what he was before he said a word, that the truth was not a defense against a framework that had already rendered its verdict. He endured nearly 4 years. Not because the KGB had trained him to resist, but because there was nothing to break. He was telling the truth. He was what he said he was. A subsequent review concluded exactly that. Genuine defector, real intelligence, no KGB connection to Oswald. He was resettled, compensated, and became a CIA consultant, advising the organization that had imprisoned him on the basis of a theory that was wrong. He died in 2008. The Warren Commission never got the definitive answer it needed from him. Not because he was hiding it, because the framework had decided his answer before he gave it. The country was left with the question. It still is. The Fall, December 1974. The office where it ended was not Angleton's. It was William Colby's. Colby had been CIA director for just over a year, reading the reviews and watching the damage accumulate for months. The occasion was a front-page story by Seymour Hersh revealing that the CIA had run Operation Chaos, monitoring thousands of American citizens opposed to the Vietnam War. Angleton's staff had been involved. Colby called him in. He told Angleton that counterintelligence had become too centralized, too secretive, too insulated from accountability, that the damage to the Soviet division was real and documented, that the Nosenko case was indefensible, that an organization that imprisoned its own sources on the basis of a single defector's theory was not performing counterintelligence. It was performing something else. He told him it was time to go. Angleton sat with that for a moment. Then he said, according to the account that survived the room, that they were making a mistake, that the forces pushing for his removal were exactly the forces he had spent his career warning about. He said, "This is not a retirement. This is a victory for the other side." He cleared his office and left. He died in May 1987, 69 years old, certain to the end that he had been right. In 1985, Aldrich Ames began passing intelligence to Moscow, working in the Soviet division, the same division Angleton had spent years paralyzing. Caught in 1994, In 2001, Robert Hansen was arrested, an FBI agent who had been selling American secrets for more than 2 decades, having begun while Angleton was still alive. Angleton had been right that moles existed. He had been wrong about where they were, who they were, and how to find them. Ames and Hansen were caught by patient evidence-based work, the kind Angleton had made structurally impossible inside the CIA for a generation. That is the part that does not resolve cleanly. What certainty costs? James Angleton was not stupid. He was not corrupt. He was not acting from malice or self-interest. He was acting from conviction. Conviction built from real experience, real betrayal. The genuine reality of Soviet intelligence operations that were more sophisticated and more penetrating than most of his colleagues were willing to acknowledge. He was right about the threat. He was catastrophically wrong about the response. Real intelligence, the kind that is actually useful, holds uncertainty as a feature, not a flaw. It says, here is what we believe. Here is how confident we are. Here is what would change our assessment. It stays open to correction, because being wrong and correcting it is survivable. Being wrong and refusing correction is what kills people and ends institutions. Certainty closes the loop. Every failure confirms the theory. Every contradiction is evidence of the conspiracy. Every voice that says you might be wrong is either naive or compromised. The system becomes immune to correction from any direction. A closed room, with a light that never goes off. The mole Angleton never found could not have done what Angleton did, could not have paralyzed the Soviet division for a decade, could not have imprisoned an innocent man for nearly 4 years, could not have ended the careers of Carlo, Gabler, Orlov, and the others whose names the partial record preserves. The most comprehensive damage to the CIA's most important mission was not inflicted from outside. It came from inside, from a brilliant man who was certain. Certainty does not need an enemy to do its work. It does the work itself. A warning from history. Anatoli Golitsyn is believed to still be alive, in his mid-90s under CIA protection. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, he said the collapse was part of the deception. He has never recanted. James Angleton was buried in Boise, Idaho, in May 1987. He left behind a counterintelligence apparatus that had to be rebuilt almost from scratch, and a generation of officers who had learned, from watching what happened to the ones who tried, that the safest thing was not to try. Remember Yuri Nosenko, a man who told the truth in a gray cell in Virginia, with a light that never went off for nearly 4 years. The Warren Commission never got the answer it needed from him, not because he withheld it, because the framework had decided his answer before he gave it. Remember Peter Carlo, 2 decades of service, an accusation never made, never answered. The apology came 12 years after he was gone, with back pay, as if time could be reimbursed. These men were not destroyed by the enemy. They were destroyed by a system that had lost the ability to distinguish between the threat outside and the certainty within. The previous episodes of Tradecraft have covered men who changed history in a single moment. Penkovsky in one decision to pass information. Arkhipov in one decision to say no. The moments were dramatic, the stakes were immediate, and history turned on them cleanly. The Angleton story does not work that way. There was no single moment. There was a slow, logical, internally consistent accumulation, each step following from the last, each conclusion making the next one more inevitable, until the machine had turned so completely inward that it was consuming the institution it was built to protect. Systems do not fail all at once. They fail the way Angleton did. Gradually, then completely, with the logic intact all the way to the end. Next time on Tradecraft, a British physicist sits in a small room in London and tells MI5 everything. Not because they caught him, not because they had evidence, because he decided to. He had given the Soviets the atomic bomb. He had worked inside the Manhattan Project, Los Alamos, the most secret place in the world, and passed every design, every calculation, every breakthrough to Moscow for years, without anyone suspecting. And then one morning in January 1950, he walked in and confessed. The question that British intelligence couldn't answer then, and that historians still argue about now, is why. Klaus Fuchs, the man who gave Stalin the bomb. Next time on Tradecraft.